Hey sword friends, I know that you and I both love katana swords, but sometimes you want something bigger. This is a Nagamaki, a giant field sword that could be used against cavalry, against the horses, or the men who rode on it back in the day. So let's take a look at this long-handled Nagamaki. Now, what classifies a Nagamaki? That just means, Naga means long and Maki is like wrapping. So it classifies when the handle itself is almost as long as the blade. You would call this perhaps in the family of a Nagamaki. You could also argue it's just an ogatana. It's a long kind of field type sword from another period of time. I've seen Nagamaki, and I used to own one that the handle was about this long and then the blade was much shorter. So the handle was actually far longer than the entire sword itself. But this is kind of a half and half type of example here. And this is a beautiful example with the brown wrapping. It's a pretty simple sword as far as the koshirai are concerned. The kashira here is just a simple alloy metal, as well as the fuchi here with some flowers on it, also a simple alloy. And inside here there's two manuki, one on that side and one on this side. The ska handle, this is a really long handle, great for leverage, is 15 and almost 16 inches. That is very long. A typical katana is about 8, 10, perhaps 11. This is much longer, designed to be held way up like this to get unbelievable cutting power on this pretty beefy blade. The wrap is in a brown color. It has a real Samegawa raised skin underneath here. The flowered manuki decorations are pretty average. It has an unusual one-handed wrap. This is called katate maki, one-handed wrap. It might have been easier for one-handed wielding, but I've also heard that if your hand was covered in blood, that this wrapping would keep the blood from getting down inside here in the Samegawa, so it was easier to clean. Whereas if you had these diamonds here and your hand was covered with blood, it would get stuck in here and start to, smell and stink over time and be hard to clean. So perhaps it was used to keep the blood from running down into the raised skin. Perhaps it's simply decorative because it probably used less wrapping than the diamonds. There's probably 3 or 4 reasons. It could be for aesthetic value. It's what they call a battle wrap, and I like the look of it. It's different. However, I would still probably hold this with 2 hands for leverage, but it could be used one-handed if you're strong enough to wield it. The overall length of the sword is 47 inches. It's quite large. Blade itself is 27.55 inches, and as you can see, it has a massive, large tip kisaki here, more like a naginata. The blade is 1.26 inches wide, and the thickness is 0.28 where the distal taper is. This is battle ready, meaning it's not just for show. You could take this right onto the battlefield. They say it is quenched in oil, it was tempered by hand, and it was forged with the annealing treating process. Now, one of the interesting things about this is the sugata, which is the shape or the form. This is an uno kubi zukuri blade shape, which means the neck of the cormorant, and I don't know if you can see that, but it has a relieved shinogiji, which is a diamond-shaped kisaki here, and it provides really good balance and strong cutting tip for stabbing. The blade is much thinner here, and then it gets thicker out here. See that? That's that cormorant's neck here. So if you can see, the spine is thick, it tapers right here. As you can see, the blade changes in formation and gets thinner at the spine, and then it gets thick right near the kisaki to give you a little more beef down here for stabbing, and it also bolsters the tip for strength. The blade has a real grain, the hara here, which looks like tree bark. Really interesting to look at. I'll show it to you closer up. And you can see it has bohi on both sides of the blade here, and that fuller lightens that part of the blade as well. That tsuba guard is made of blackened iron, and the habaki here and the seppa are both made of copper. That's an interesting habaki here. It has a little bit of a fire pattern there, if you can see. And the seppa, it all fits very, very nicely. It doesn't move around at all. It's very, very well put together. Black painted kind of raindrop pattern, which keeps it from showing scratches and oil and fingerprints. So it's kind of a dull pattern. You have the black rib here, which is really cool for holding on. And the Sageo cord wrap is brown silk. Putting the sword back, it starts to get tight right here, which is excellent. Very well fit scabbard, and if I push, it really takes some effort to lock it in, and that's great because it's not going to fall out if you were riding a horse or running through the fields. You really have to use your hands to pull this apart. It's not going to come apart easily, which is how I want it. I prefer these nice tight fittings, especially on a newer sword, because it'll loosen over time. At the end of the scabbard, there's no kojiri here, nothing really featured. It's just that simple wood pattern, raindrop pattern all the way down. Moving back, I'll show you the size of the sword here. So as you can see, it's pretty long. And then as I move up here, extremely long Nagamaki handle here. Because of the shape of this, you're going to get a lot of leverage, kind of a top-heavy blade, but good control with a balance point about 5 inches out from the Suba guard. The end of this thing is just massive and cleaving and designed to cut through large, hard targets. Can you see the thickness of that kasaki, that blade there? That's going to go through a lot of big things. So this is just a beautiful, long sword. For those of you who like big weapons, the old field-style weapons of the samurai, this is probably not something you'd carry around in the Edo period. It would be more for the Sengoku Jidai period, the Warring States period, and the Ashigaru, the samurai foot soldiers, probably carried these to cut down horses or to just cleave through the armies that stood in front of them. You can find these online if you research large sword or large katana, o-katana, Nagamaki. You're going to get all different shapes and sizes, different color patterns, and different price points. This sword is about $450, but you can get them more expensive in the thousands range, and you might be able to find one for about $300 with less quality on the furniture. So there's one more peek at this beautiful, massive sword of the samurai. What a cool weapon. Now that the winter is coming, I probably won't do any tameshigiri with this yet, but I do have some tatami mats at home, and I may soak them in water and do some cutting with this. I have a feeling that that beefy blade is going to go through those like butter. The issue with these is if you swing it, the blade is heavy, it's going to pull you forward, and therefore you'll be susceptible to attacks for a brief second in time. So hopefully if you miss, you're not too wide open. This is not a quick defensive sword. Again, it's made for large hacking power and perhaps stabbing forward. But if you had 500 samurai on the battlefield carrying these, oh my gosh, what a frontline powerhouse that would be. I would not want to stand on the other side of one of these blades with a guy in armor coming at you with even minimum experience, because this thing's going to hack off any appendage that's sitting between it and yourself. Thank you, my sword friends. We'll see you all very soon. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your time. Bye-bye.